Hi everyone, welcome to this next video. So in this one, we're just going to be looking at basic substitution with algebra. We're going to be talking about how we use the formulas we're given, and then also how we can link it into some wordy problems. Something like this is really important when it comes to quadratic graphs, when it comes to sequences, when it comes to just all algebraic skills as well, simultaneous equations. It's just a really fundamental skill that you need to make sure that you are aware of, okay? So we're going to talk through the fundamentals and then answer a couple of questions. So it tells you that x is 4 and y is -2. So what we're going to do is basically take that value, x is 4, plug it in there. We're going to take this value of y being -2 and plug it in there. Now, one thing you need to make sure that you write down for this is you write down the sum you're doing. You also need to be aware that 5x means 5 times x, and 2y means 2 times y. Really important you understand that, 2 lots of or 5 lots of. Okay, so based on that, we're saying that means 5 times by 4 is that first bit we're working out. And then the next bit, y is -2, so we're saying 2 times, and then we're taking that -2, plugging it in there, -2. Now a key thing to be aware of here is that we have got this subtraction sign in the middle. So what you can almost do is you could box that, and when I box that, it turns to that. You could box that, and when I box that, it turns to that, okay? And then we'll deal with this negative in a second. Well, let's work that out. 5 times 4 is 20, and 2 times -2 is actually -4, because when you do a positive times a negative, you get a negative. Then I need to bring this negative down. So this is what I've actually now got. I've got 20 minus -4. If you have two negatives right next to each other like that, what it actually becomes is 20 plus 4. So the answer to this question would be 24. Okay, so actually kind of like putting a box around it and then understanding what you're doing might help you split it apart to then substitute it in later on. So let's look at this next example here. You could pause this if you want, try and get that first mark where you substitute the values in. Just be careful that there is a power here now, and think about your rules of BIDMAS on what you need to do first when you have an indice involved. So let's box it again. 5p, well, p is 7. So that bit becomes 5 times 7. Put a box around it. We've now got this second part, which is 2q squared. Well, that means 2 times q, and q is -3. -3 squared. So we put a box around that. Then I've still got my negative that needs to come down, so I just fill that in. Now, by doing that in an exam, you've just picked yourself up a mark. So it's really important you get your head around that. Okay, let's go through this. BIDMAS. Are there any brackets? There's no brackets involved in it. Are there any indices? Yes, there is. So this is why it's really important that you do the indice part first. Now, -3 squared is actually the same as doing -3 times -3. So that actually turns to a positive. -3 times -3 is +9. Then you're actually doing 2 times 9. So that's the next bit you need to do. So you do your indice first, the -3 squared. Always make sure you do the squared part first and then times it by 2 in this case. 2 times 9 is 18. So this box actually becomes 18. This first box is quite simple. It's just 5 times 7. Hopefully you know your times tables. 5 times 7 is 35. And then I still need to bring this negative down. So it becomes 35 minus 18. Now there's no double negatives involved here. It is just very simply a case of doing 35 minus 18, which ends up giving me an answer of 17. Okay, so that would be your second mark. So in this first one we did, the first mark comes from substituting it in, second mark for getting 24. The second type of example here, just please make sure you remember to do the squared part first, then times it by that, and then work out the rest of it from there. Okay, pause the video now, have a go at these ones. There's 3 here for you to do. I've told you the value of s and t, and all of these have got s and t's in. Just give them a go. So pause the video, have a go at them, and then I'll go through them now. Right, so we're saying s is 5. So in this first one, we're doing 7 times 5. And t is -6, so we're doing 4 times -6. Then we're bringing that plus down. 7 times 5 is 35. 4 times -6, well, we just do 6 times 4, which is 24. But because it's a positive times a negative, it becomes -24. Bring your positive down. And now, because we've got a plus and a minus together, the plus it's actually weaker. So actually what you end up doing is 35 minus 24, okay, which ends up giving you 11. So just really important there to be aware of the fact that what you're saying is 4 times minus 6 is minus 24. Bring the plus down, but then because there's a positive and a negative together, the positive is weaker, the negative takes over. If the signs are the same here, so if you had two positives, so if the signs are the same, you add them together. If the signs are the same, so look back up here to what we did here, if the signs are the same again, you actually end up adding them anyway. So if you've got two signs next to each other that are the same, so negative, negative, it becomes a positive. And if they were both positive, it would become a positive anyway. So if the signs are the same next to each other, it actually just turns to a plus. That's another way of thinking about it. Okay, let's look at the next one. So we're going to box this, and the t is minus 6. So we're saying this becomes 6 times minus 6 squared. So I'm writing that out. Then we box the next bit, 3s. S is 5. So that is 3 times 5. So I know I've got that bit done. Put my plus sign back in the middle. And again, let's go to BIDMAS. Got to do the indice part first. So minus 6 times minus 6 is positive 36. Then you bring down that 6. And now what you're actually doing is you're doing 6 times 36. You could use long multiplication to work that out. So you could just do 36 times 6 like this. 6 times 6 is 36. Carry 3. 6 times 3 is 18, 19, 20, 21. Or it could be in a calculator paper, in which case you'd use your calculator. So that gives you 216. 3 times 5, very simply, is 15. So that just becomes 15. Bring your plus down. So you're doing 216 plus 15 to get an answer of 231. So 1 mark there and 1 mark there. Okay. Last one then to look at. Final one here. Box that. 2s, or s is 5. So 2 times 5. And then 3 times t is just 3 times minus 6. And we've got our minus there. So we've got our boxed parts again. No indices involved, so I can go straight away with the times. 2 times 5 is 10. And then we're doing 3 times minus 6, which is minus 18. Because one positive, one negative. Bring this negative down again. And now you can see what we've actually got. 2 negatives next to each other. If the signs are the same, it just becomes a positive. So you're doing 10 plus 18, which gives you 28. So very commonly, you will get questions that involve negatives because pupils constantly make mistakes with the negatives. So if you're not sure on anything I've just done, maybe pause it or go back and revisit those bits. Okay. So the next bit we're going to look at is just some wordy questions. So how does this link into substitution with some worded stuff? Okay. So we're going to go through this one now. Okay, so we've got lots of information here. Let's just kind of look at some key things. So it says this formula is used to work out how many days it would take to build a house where D is equal to my number of days. Okay, so what I'm just going to do is I'm going to write above that days so I don't get confused. And N is number of workers. So I can just call that people working. Okay, so what this is saying is if I want to build a house, what I basically do is I say it's 1,400 divided by how many people I've got working will tell me the days. Okay, so it tells me two different companies. Billy Company uses 7 workers, so that would be N is 7. And Sharon's company takes 280 days. And then we've got 2 questions here. Part 1, work out the number of days Billy's company takes. And part 2, how many people does Sharon's company use? So let's just split this up. I'm going to split my page into 2. I'm going to do Billy's here. I'm going to do Sharon's here. I'm just going to write the formula out again. So D is equal to 1,400 divided by N, and D is equal to 1,400 divided by N. So let's fill in what we know for Billy. Well, what do we know with Billy? We know how many workers there were, and workers is N. So to work out number of days, I'm just going to do 1,400 divided by number of workers, which in this case is 7. Okay. Now, luckily, 1,400 does divide quite nicely by 7. So therefore, we can say that D is equal to 200. So the number of days Billy's company would take would be 200 days. It would take 200 days for Billy's company to build that house because he's got 7 people working on it. Okay. Sharon's is a little bit different because now we don't have number of workers. What we actually have is the number of days. So that's D. So I change D for 280 now. What I'm now doing is I'm having to try and work out this N part down here. I'm having to figure out what this part is, no longer working out this part. So to do that, if you have two variables like that, what we can just really simply do is just flip those two over. So N is actually now equal to 1400 divided by 280. And the reason is because we're dividing by N here, so we take it over and we times by N. And then because we're timesing by 280, when I move that N over, because effectively that now becomes 280 times N is equal to 1400. When I then take that over, it becomes a divide. So N is equal to 1400 divided by 280. Okay, so just a quick way, you can just swap them over. But the actual method on what is happening is what I've just gone through there. Now, if you actually do 1400 divided by 280, it tells you that it's 5. Okay, so that now is 5 people. Okay, now that question might actually ask you how many more people are working at Billy's company than Sharon's, and then therefore you'd say the difference between that and that is 2. It might ask you what is the difference in the number of days, and you'd say Billy's takes 200 but Sharon's takes 280, so the difference in days is 80 days. It might tell you how much Billy pays his workers, and it might tell you how much Sharon pays her workers, and so you'd have to work out how much the people earn or how much it costs Billy and Sharon. Lots of variations, but the fundamentals are there in what we're doing. Okay, as I say, substitution is really important. It comes up in so many different areas of maths. Just make sure you're happy with the concept. One thing I would say is make sure you're really, really happy with this BIDMAS idea, and making sure that if there's an indice here, you do the indice first, and like we did here, making sure that you do the indice first before you multiply it by the 6. Okay, hope you found that useful. Hope it helped you. I'll see you all in the next video.